Thank you, Ellen, and welcome to another racism panel discussion, sponsored by Global Faith in Action and the Beyond Tolerance movement. The title of today's discussion is Becoming a Beloved Community. On January 6th, as rioters and white supremacists stormed the USA Capitol, bullying their way into lawmakers' offices, I felt helpless, scared, watching evil take place. 63 years ago, Martin Luther King Jr. envisioned the USA to become a beloved community. Tonight, 63 years later, it has become obvious that we have not become a beloved community. If Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today, I am certain he would say we must work harder than ever to become a beloved community. I would imagine that those of you who are listening to our discussion would ask King, what must we do to become a beloved community? Well, we have a real nice, diverse panel to help us begin to answer that question tonight. The question, what must we do to become a beloved community? Let me take a few minutes to introduce to you the panelists that you will meet in a few minutes. Sister Deborah Dirks, a Muslim, author and educator and community organizer. Mother Dawn Frankfurt, pastor of St. James Episcopal Church. Tony Brown is a Christian, a promoter of peace throughout the world, and artist in residence at Maheston College. And there's Jonathan Flesher. He's a member of the board of directors of Global Faith in Action. And then Dr. William Van. He's a pastor of the Isis Christian Center. And now we have two more panelists, but I want to take a little time to do a little longer introduction for them, because if we are serious about becoming a beloved community, there's a very important step we need to take. We need to understand what is important in each other's religion. Perhaps one of the first steps could begin with what is at the heart of three faiths: the Jews, the Muslims, and the Christians. We have chosen two panelists to help us understand the important stories of ancient Abraham, who we find in all three sacred writings. Is there the possibility that religious Abraham stories found in all three religions give us insight as to how to become a beloved community? So let me introduce to you Naim Ballout. He's the president of the Alu Bayt Islamic Center in Wichita. And then there's Rabbi Michael Davis, Rabbi of Congregation Emmanuel. Rabbi Michael Davis, would you begin?
Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to have this opportunity to share some words with you and also with Naim, because we're going to be talking a little bit about the same person from a different perspective. I thought that I would take this opportunity to take a look at some sacred texts. What Christians call the Old Testament, Jews call the Bible, an acronym for Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, the prophets, and the writings, everything else. So looking at the Torah, the first part, in the first book of the Torah, in the book of Genesis, there's one word that I wanted to focus on. So I'd like to show you a Sefer Torah, first of all, a Torah scroll. I'll turn this around here. So let's see, here we go. This particular Torah scroll is one that was taken from Czechoslovakia after the Holocaust, after World War II. And it was one of about 1,000, 1,500 that were brought to England and repaired and were sent out all over the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the text, but as I say, I want to focus on one particular word. And this is the word right here. The word is hineni. And the word hineni means I am here. But it's more than just saying, hey, I'm here. Yep, I'm here, Mom, don't worry. No, this is something very special. The word hineni means I am here, I'm ready to serve, I'm here for you. It's only 9 times in the entire Torah, the entire first 5 books of the Bible. And the first time it appears, let me set this up a little bit. The first time the word hineni appears, here I am, is in a story regarding Abraham. This is when Abraham is called by God to sacrifice his son Isaac. Now we know, of course, those of us who've read to the end, know that this never actually happened, but Abraham did not know that. And if we look here in the text, it says, Vayhi achar hadavrim ha'ela, after these things, Elohim nisa et Abraham, God tested Abraham. Vayomer alav, and called out to him, Abraham, he called out Abraham, Vayomer hineni. And here's the word hineni, that how Abraham responds. Vayomer kachna et bincha et yechidcha asher ahavta et Yitzchak v'lech lecha el Eretz Moria v'lehu sham le'olah al achad heharim asher omar alecha. So here God is saying, take your beloved son Isaac and sacrifice him where I'll tell you. But when God calls to Abraham, what does Abraham says? He says, hineni, I'm here. I'm here, God. I'm here ready to serve you. The second time in the entire Torah where we find the word hineni is just a few verses later, where Abraham and his son Isaac are walking up the mountain. And at this time, the two of them are walking together. The Yomer Yitzchak el Avraham Avi, and then Isaac said to Abraham, his father, the Yomer Avi, calls out and says, my father, the Yomer Hineni b'ni. And here, Abraham is responding to his son who is so confused, doesn't know what's happening, doesn't know where they're going, doesn't know what's going to occur. And Abraham is there to reassure him. Abraham was a man who had such faith in God that he was willing to answer God's call for such a difficult task. At the same time, earlier in the Torah, God tells Abraham that God is going to destroy the cities of Sodom and Amorah, Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham stood up to God at that point. Abraham stood up to God then, and he stood up for God in this passage that I just read. In every case, Abraham is saying, I am here, all of me, to serve. The last time this word hineni appears in the Torah is at the beginning of Exodus, when God sends an angel to appear before Moses in the burning bush. And God assigns Moses the task of setting free the children of Israel. And once again, when God calls to Moses in this case, Moses says, Hineni. So both Abraham and Moses were people who could say, I am here for you. I am here to serve. And as we heard earlier, Abraham says to his son Isaac, my son, I'm here for you. This teaches us, I believe, that we must stand up. We must stand up for something important. We must be present to help those who are in need, who are in doubt, who are questioning, who are pushed down. We must be able to say, Hineni, I am here for you. I think this is a lesson we might learn both from Moses, from Abraham, and from others in our lives in more modern times. For instance, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who stood up for other people and gave of their whole being for others. That's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. Thank you. And go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi Michael. I went a different route. So I went before the sacrifice part. So I'm going to start with this. First, I want to thank you, Sam, and the organization for setting this thing up. It's very important to get everybody exposed and getting to learn somebody else's religion or point of view of the same fact or history of it. So the story of Prophet Ibrahim in the Quran is addressed in multiple verses and chapters. So I went through it and I picked up what I thought it was good to highlight about Prophet Ibrahim in what he brought with his aspect of monotheism, because that's what we call to as Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him. So I'll start with this. I'm going to recite some of the verses to you. Then I'm going to give you a short history of what this does, what did this to me as a person to learn from, so that I can share that with you. So I'm going to take about maybe 7 to 10 minutes here. So bear with me here. So I started with this. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent. This is God talking to Ibrahim alayhi salam. Said, surely Ibrahim was an exemplar, obedient to God, upright, and he was not of the polytheists. Very defining what Ibrahim stands for. He continues, grateful to his favor, to God's favor, he chose him and guided him on the right path. And we gave him good in this world, and in the next, he must surely be among the good ones. Then he talks about his messenger now. Then we revealed to you, O Ibrahim, follow the face, this is for all of us, follow the face of Ibrahim. He's telling us to follow the face of Abraham, the upright one, and he was not of the polytheist again. He's now emphasizing to us to follow in the footsteps of Prophet Abraham and not be of the polytheist. And who has a better religion than he who submits himself entirely to God. And he is the doer of good and follows the face of Abraham, the upright one, and God took Abraham as a friend. This is for us to follow next. Most surely, the nearest one, the nearest of people to Abraham are those who followed him and this prophet, and those who believe in God, the guardian of the believers. The faith of your father, Abraham, he named you a submitter, he named you a Muslim before this time. So this is just a short one of the couple of verses I picked up from the Quran, talks about Prophet Ibrahim. So these teaching, what did this teach me? What did I learn from this? This is part of the story that I lived. So I'm going to start with this. The story of the Prophet Ibrahim is mentioned throughout the Quran, multiple chapters. What did Prophet Ibrahim taught me and what I learned from this message? As we refer to him, all religion, all the monotheist religion, Christian and Jews, they honor and respect this prophet and guard him to be the father of our faith. And we place him in a good standing. From his kins came the religion of the religion of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So his sons, as Muslim believe, he has two sons, Ishmael and Ishaq, and Isaac. From Isaac came Judaism and Christianity. From Muslim came Ismail with Ishmael, in that sense. So we are the descendant of the same father. So we refer to each other as cousins, in a sense. How did these verses of teaching affected my life and shaped my perspective of religion throughout my life? I will share with you tonight my own experience. I was born and raised in Lebanon from a Muslim household family. My grandfather used to work in the city of Beirut, in the downtown Beirut. His boss was a Lebanese, a Jewish person. His last name was Mizrahi, the very famous name in Lebanon, still famous now. He's a businessman. This Mr. Mizrahi, I'm going to refer to him as that. This Jewish man used to come to our village in summertime in south of Lebanon to pick up fruit, vegetable, wheat, prepare stuff for the winter time. You will get your stuff from the village, you take it to Beirut, you have your winter time stuff ready. This Jewish friend, Mr. Mizrahi, was a great man. He was a good man, a good businessman, respectful man. We enjoyed his company as he came to visit us every summertime. Him and my grandfather were boss and employee, yet they respected each other and cared for one another. Never looked at each other as a religious person, just as another human being. We should respect one another and honor one another. All is due to what I learned from my grandparents, parents, and the teaching. That's what brought me this to here now. I went to school in Lebanon in a predominantly Christian community. I went to middle school for 3 years in a Christian village in south of Lebanon. My friends were Christians and Muslims. We shared good times, recess time, we played a lot of soccer, we ate together, we drank together, we enjoyed together and studied together. This has taught me how to look at one another without looking at their faith, their religion, just as their humanity. They're good friends, and they'll stay good friends. This is what brought us to here now. As we go through this issue that we're suffering now in our countries, can we look at one another and honor one another, respect one another, and not create mischief and divisiveness between one another. And I leave it with this small supplication. Before I do that, I want to say this, as I look at the title of this chat tonight, to create a beloved community, is to work toward a respectful and meaningful understanding to becoming a beloved community. Much appreciation to the organization for putting this meeting together. I'll leave with you this short dua that I read. I will share with you here. Give me a second. Dear pray, this is the last prayer they say before you go. The last prayer should be glory to God, and greeting in it should be peace. And the last of their prayer should be praise to God, the Lord of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Naim. Thank you so much. And it was good to hear some of your own personal story as well. Thank you. Now all the panelists, everyone, all 369 of all of you had the chance to say things. I think some of you who are Christian, I think we have 3 Christians in this group here. If you would like to say some things about the importance of Abraham as well, and if it has any effect upon our seeing some unity between the 3 religions, that'd be fine for you to share, but you don't have to do that either. This is opened up to all of you to share what does it take to be a wonderful community, a beloved community. And so we will in a little bit, I'm suggesting that we can get into beyond more the Abraham story. We can get into what does it take to be a beloved community, and it doesn't have to do with those scriptures. But if some of you right now have some thoughts, that's where I think I'd like to see you focus your thoughts at this moment. And since I didn't have anyone who was making a presentation on Christian, if some of you want to say something on that as well, be wonderful. So it's all up to all of us to share what we would like to share.
Well, I would like to say something.
Okay.
I was very actually impressed. I liked what Rabbi Michael started with. That word hinini. It said, "I am here." It's a very beautiful thing to hear a prophet responding to God to say, "I am here," meaning you have chosen me. I am willing to carry that message, whatever it's going to take. I am here. And I think it's upon us as a leader of this community to hear our cry of our community members and the community at large and say, yes, we are here. We are willing to listen, willing to work together, and willing to move forward to a better place.
And Naim, I think another important part is what you said about the fact that we all share our common humanity, that we are all human beings before we even get to the definition of our own religions. And, you know, I was just studying some genealogy and about our DNA and things like that last night, and being reminded about how all of us have almost all of our genetics in common. And what we all have in common at the foundational level is that we are all human beings, that we have most things in common. And if we can find a place where we can stand and remember the things we have in common, rather than focus on the few the details, the things that that have served to divide us. I think it'll be very important. And I'm also really curious to, maybe these two words don't work exactly together, but Hanini about I am here is about a person responding to God. And your congregation, Rabbi, is called Emmanuel, which is God is with us, right?
Yes.
So it seems to me a perfect marriage of those two words, that God is with all human beings, and hopefully we can be saying to all human beings, I am here.
Exactly right. And if you think about it, why did God? I mean, not everyone follows the faith of Abraham, but think about, why did God choose Abraham in the first place? The text does not say. The Torah does not. The Bible does not say God chose Abraham because X, Y, and Z. However, God did choose Abraham. His name was Avram at the time, and God changes his name to Avraham to reflect many peoples, so that Abraham would represent many peoples, would be the father of multitudes. And so by reaching Abraham, by sending out Abraham, God was embracing all of us. And we have to realize that we all come either from Abraham or certainly from Adam, that we all come from one source.
Well, am I correct that the term was Hanini, but it said I am here and I am here to serve? Was that
The word literally means I am here. Hine means here. Hineni means I'm here. But it's used in the context. It's always used in a more poignant more meaningful, more rich way than just saying, I'm here. It's, I am here to serve. I'm here for you. I'm giving myself. When Abraham says to his son, I am here, my son. When Isaac says it to his son, and Joseph says it to his father, I am here for you. Ask of me, and I will give.
So from that connotation, then I would agree with all of the panel. If we all took the initiative to say, I am here for you, my humanity is here for you, I think that we would maybe perhaps begin to see some changes, because I would agree with what Don said, Pastor Don said, and that is that physiologically we're all the same. From a humanity standpoint, we are all the same. I think the challenge is from an ideological standpoint, that's where the separation occurs. And it's very easy to grasp the concept, because if you're in need of a blood transfusion, it makes no difference if it comes from a white man, a black man, an Asian man. It makes no difference. Blood is blood if it's the right blood type. So I think that proves the litmus test that we are the same. So then I don't think we're talking about a physiological or a physical makeup. I think that what we're dealing with is a thought process, a mindset. I could say it differently and say a brainwashing effect that has been systematically built upon and sustained for generations, to the point where now it's more common thought. It's a belief system that's internalized. I don't even have to think about it anymore. It's how I subconsciously believe. And I think until we deal with that piece of it, and that's the messy stuff that nobody wants to touch. But until we touch and rip the scab off that and let it bleed a little bit, and we'll see red blood, then perhaps then we can begin to establish the fact that we are equal and the same.
And something else that, and Naim, please correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that I know Islam looks to Abraham for is as a person who submits himself to God. And Islam, as I understand it, that's what Islam is. And in Judaism, well, this Hineni, I'm here for you, it's not in a haughty way, like I will lead you, but rather it is in a submissive way. I am here for you, to support you.
That's true. It's mentioned that they said the faith of your father Abraham, he named you Muslim before. So before the word Islam came about, the word Islam, which Rabbi Michael addressed, is to submit. And he was the one who submitted fully to the will of God to put his son to that sacrifice. So that's the level of submission that he gave everything for that.
And I hope I can say this. I hope I can say this right. In the New Testament, when Paul is talking about Abraham and our tradition of Abraham, God has said to Abraham, I have blessed you so you can be a blessing to many other people. And we understand that first in the Old Testament to be all the generations that will come after you. And then when it appears in the New Testament, we also understand it to be for those who have fallen away, those who have inherited the faith through many generations, from Abraham to Paul to other Christians. We are blessed to be a blessing even to those who have fallen away, to bring them back into the community. That there is sort of like reduce, reuse, recycle. It's get everybody, even the ones who have fallen away are to be brought back in the beloved community where everyone has a place. And we all have a purpose to be bringing everyone into it.
I think there's been something in the world which is old, but it's socially constructed, and it involves categorizing, separating out, which means it can potentially create an us and them mentality. And some of those differences are real and true, but they don't necessarily mean that one is better than the other. But I think there is a tendency to go there. And that's where tribalism comes in. And I think we can see it operating today in the United States, a kind of tribalism where people are hunkered down into their places and never the twain shall meet. I think there's an ongoing struggle for an idea, the concept of oneness. And I think in the beloved community, we do have oneness, but I think we have to really, given the mindset that we live in, we have a tremendous rock to push up the hill. Hopefully it doesn't come back on us like it did for Sisyphus, but we have a tremendous rock to push up that hill. It's a kind of rewiring our brain to build a beloved community.
I think it is important as we are distressed watching the news, etc., to remember that humanity has never been perfect. It's easy to look and see, especially right now, that our humanity is in the grips of fighting to define itself. But when Martin Luther King was putting that speech forward about the beloved community, they had just come through the Freedom Riders and the sit-ins. They were going through, well, it would be after the summer schools in Mississippi, the Freedom Summer. There were people being hung, people dying from injustice. We have, I think, maybe forgotten how harsh things were in 1964. And how hard the non-violence movement had to work to sustain itself and to bring itself forward. Now, I am a Muslim, but I was brought up in the Mennonite church, which is, of course, a pacifist church. Pacifism is not easy. It takes a lot of work to sit and not come back at someone. And to make the beloved community, that's an essential part. Not that we don't teach or give by example, but that not striking back, which is not easy, even if it's only verbal, it is so hard. And when we see people dying in the Capitol, it pulls at our emotions as Americans. You know, we love America, and then having those emotions come in, it teaches us how very hard nonviolence really is. And I think it's part of why it's so hard to watch the news these days. But we need to reach out and comfort each other, and that I am here for you to help you not with arrogance, but with sharing, is so important.
Pacifism takes a lot of courage. Takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of strength, and to lead with your heart like that.
I think that there's a, you know, with all of the events that we've just seen, there's a generation that's coming up. I think two things. There's a generation who's still entrenched in power, and at this point is fighting mad and will not and refuses to relinquish any of that power. And the problem is that when you're in power, it's hard for those who are subordinate to you, who don't have the money, the influence, the capital, all those things, to overcome that hurdle. And then you make that hurdle even more challenging. I think what was refreshing to me to see in over the summer and over all of these different events that have transpired is there is a generation that's coming on who wants to really live in that beloved community, whatever that means. The challenge is, though, we still have those who refuse to accept that community can be part and everybody can benefit in that community, who refuse to relinquish power. So the question becomes, how do we as a I'm sorry, I got my dog here doing crazy things. Anyway, she's on my lap. All right. The question becomes, how do we as a community who wants to not only think ideology about, or think from an ideal standpoint of the beloved community, work to now create that beloved community? That's where the courage and the challenge comes in. And it might not always be peaceful. It just might not. But is there a generation coming on now that has the courage to make that stand and refuse, and honestly refuse to back down until change happens? For me, I was born in '64, but at this point in my life, I'm like, I'm going to be peaceful, but I'm going to stand my ground. I'm not going to back up. I'm not going to be, dissuaded, none of that stuff. I'm just not, because for me, as an African American, the times demand that from me. It demands that. At this point, it demands that from me. That's my feelings.
And hopefully those of us who are paying attention are willing to say, I am here with you. We'll back you up and we'll stand with you there. When it's difficult to be there, and especially when it's maybe our closest peers who would be arguing with us, to stand up and say, you guys got it wrong. And when I hear what you're saying about the violence, I think not necessarily violence in terms of killing people, but doing extreme things, because that's what it takes to make some people listen. And I truly think that what happened over the summer, I deeply regret the deaths, but the response that Americans had to that was of all races. I think that's the generation you're talking about, that people coming up, people are willing, everybody is willing to stand there and say, we're not doing this. But it was because some extreme things happened. I I don't want to sound like I'm condoning violence, but I want to say it's the time that extreme things are happening, and we have to take an extreme stand and be there extremely for our brothers and sisters.
I don't think there's not a minority. I don't care what your color palette is. There's not a minority on the planet who has the capability to end racism. White America has to have a hand and be engaged if we want to end racism, period. If white America does not stand up with this beloved community, that fight will continue way past my lifetime. It was past Martin Luther King's lifetime, but until, and that's the wonderful thing that I'm saying that I think we saw over the summer was people of all colors, I'll say it like that, begin to come together and say this is wrong and we're going to stand united. And I believe we begin to watch the pendulum shift a little bit. And the more that community becomes more beloved, I am here for you, the greater the shift will be.
It's that scene of all of those movies where someone is picked on and finally people are tired of it. And one by one, people stand up next to that kid to say, we're standing with him. And I think that's what you're referring to, what you saw over the summer, that people stood up and said, no, that I'm not being attacked. I'm not being stopped by the police. I'm not being victimized this way, but I'm standing with the people who are. And you're not going to get away with it anymore because we're watching. We're watching. We are standing together.
And there was a huge outpouring from many in the country. There was a response. Corporations got involved. We got into this whole thing with the Confederacy and the statues. And I mean, something that we couldn't have even conceived of as a result of George Floyd's death. But I do think it had a lot to do with people coalescing across race and gender, and we helped, I think, to move something. I mean, we still need to move further, but I think a huge beginning shift was made there. The ongoing challenge will be, how do we sustain it?
Forgive me, Tony, for interrupting you.
No, that's fine.
I have made the mistake of being willing in the summertime to be very optimistic and caught up in the ideal that we were all going to work together on this, until we had this the transition of power that we had.
Mhm.
I think I was either uninformed or unwilling to see, or naive about how powerful and collaborating another force was. I feel very disheartened by that, and I don't want to lose the kind of community that I felt inspired by in the summer. And I'd love to talk about how you think we can maintain the beloved community when we hit serious obstacles like this.
I think Tony was right. He brought the last point when he said, how do you maintain this movement? I think that's important, because you might achieve one goal now and you might feel rested and say, okay, yeah, we got something here. We got one guy in, one guy out, we're good to go. We got Georgia to speak out, and Georgia spoke. That's not enough. The struggle is still in its think of it as a struggle that in its infancy, and you need to nurture this to become the beloved community where everybody is being treated with respect and honor, and injustice is being eradicated. I think you need to keep the pressure on. You need to get the movement on, and I agree with Dr. Van. I think it's upon the white community to speak out. It is their job to eradicate this within the group. It's not the black community, the brown community. It is the white community. It's itself. It needs to go back and revisit its history and go back and search it. Be brave about it and say, yes, we have to go back and revisit this. History is written by the victor. You go back and revisit this and correct what is wrong. In order for this country to move forward with balance and justice, you need to redo that. You cannot count in a black community to say, you're over it, forget it, or all those things to throw at you left and right. Hey, it happened 400 years ago, 200 years ago. It doesn't really matter when it happened. The ache and pain is still there. And it's not going to go away until the white community can actually step in and say, yes, here's what we did, here's how we're going to fix it, how we're going to move forward.
At the same time, I mean, certainly it is not up to the oppressed to denounce oppression. You know, you can't, it makes no sense. At the same time, I think it's broader and more inclusive than merely white America saying to white America, we have to stop. I think there has to be an outreach so that it's not white America saying to white America, we must stop. It's white America joining with all others, joining with African Americans and Native Americans and all the various folks, groups that have felt the oppression, standing all together and saying, we are people. And as people, we are not going to put up with it. So it's not white saying to white stop, it's all of us together saying to the few who insist on oppression, saying that is not what humanity should be about. That is not what we all together as a group, as a people. And again, getting back to Abraham. Abraham represents the all. Abraham represents beyond the specific. The idea that Abraham rejected the religion of his father, of Terah, and went out on his own to encompass everybody. That's what we need to do, and that's what King did. That's what King did. He spoke from his heart. He spoke from his Christian faith, but he spoke words that resonated with everyone, so that everyone can come there together. He wasn't saying, "All right, you white people have to change this." He was saying, "We as humans can rise up together and overwhelm this, like a wave overwhelms the shore."
I think that's what we saw this summer.
Yes. Yes.
And in the beloved community, I think we can all understand. I'm learning to talk about intersectionality, but we all have some areas of our lives where we're oppressed. So if we're all talking about doing this together, it's for everybody. I don't mean to, I understand that the primary reason for this is ending structural racism in our society. That's the primary thing. But the way Dr. King talked about it was for everyone. And when the beloved community comes together, we all benefit. I mean, when the love is going around, everybody gets the love, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And as people look at this, we need to look at it from the point of view of we as humanity. There may be those who have fallen to the side one way or another, but if we as humanity are doing this, then we can move forward. Any group by themselves gets stopped. It almost has to be all of us. It has to be we as humanity can stand up and do this, and it has to stop because we're not being violent, we're just, no.
Okay, and now another thing at the same time, as what Mother Dawn said, each of us has a part of ourselves that has been oppressed. At the same time, each of us has an oppressor within our hearts, right? Each one of us has an opinion, an attitude towards someone or something else that is intolerant, that is dismissive at the very least. We find ourselves in a position where even in our private thoughts, we say something about another group, another person. We have to look inside our own hearts. And for us to be totally there for someone else, we have to be open. And to be totally open means we have to examine those pieces of ourselves that we don't like to look at. I remember, Sam, remember the IID, the dialogue with that Turkish peace group. The first time I went to one of their events, I found myself thinking silently to myself some thoughts that were not very productive, not very positive. And I was surprised to hear them in my own thoughts and realize that's something I have to do something about. I have to change that inner attitude that comes up unbidden. We have to recognize that we are oppressed, and we may not recognize how someone else is oppressed. We may not see that. We may not recognize that it's really that bad because we're not experiencing what they're experiencing. This is hard stuff.
We have our own work to do.
Yeah, this is hard stuff.
We have our
That's the biggest struggle, is the struggle within themselves to enlighten yourself, to bring yourself up to say, yes, I can see my own mistake here. I can look in the mirror and say, yeah, I got biases. Yes, I have this, and work on it to clear it out. You can't clean somebody's house without cleaning your house first.
I think that we can, I agree. I think we have to look inside of our own hearts because, as you stated, all of us have some oppressive nature in us because that's just who we are. But I also think that when we begin to evaluate our own hearts, we do have to look for the truthism in each of us and make those corrections. But I also believe wholeheartedly that we have to, as people said, come together and fundamentally resist what others think or what other groups might happen, or opinions that others have. But at the same time, I mean, I can disagree with a person, stand on anything, but I don't have to lessen who they are as a human being because I disagree with them. What frustrates me the most is that a person is you either totally agree. I mean, over this whole issue over the last year, I've lost friends that I thought we were fundamentally pretty good friends. But because I differed in your opinion than the opinion that you had, and I wasn't going to change and you weren't going to persuade me, now we parted ways, which in my opinion is ridiculous because we had so much other stuff in common. We enjoyed each other's company so much, except for this issue. And so this issue is so deep in our hearts until we can't get around it when we have so many other things that we can celebrate together. That is difficult for me to understand. That you know, we have so much that we can celebrate together, but we have this one piece or these two pieces or whatever it is, and because of them, now we can't get along. I mean, that's challenging.
But that's how you find out sometimes the truth about something. Correct? When it's a crunch time, when it's a rough time, genuine things shows up. Right? It's not at the easy time, at the happy time, enjoyable time. When it's a crunch time, is when humanity steps up one step above and go above differences and different in opinion and philosophy and say, okay, here's our shared humanity, what we share together.
Yeah, sometimes it takes.
And that's where we have to start with.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a piece of sand to irritate the oyster to make a pearl. But I remember a man by the name of Nabil Sayam, of blessed memory, who, you know, he and I disagreed about a lot of things, but he and I could still go around and talk about the things we do agree agree on. We could talk about our individual faith and what we have in common, even though there was plenty about which we disagree. Sometimes you have to find that commonality to find the anchor so that you can survive the grain of sand, the disagreement, the scratching, the sandpapery. Because if you don't have that commonality, that recognition of commonality and affection for each other, an open heart, then that sandpaperish disagreement, arguing, will tear people apart more easily.
I think it's important if we take it in a way thinking, whatever we disagree on, let that disagreement be a push for us to actually seek the truth of the matter. Don't let it be a front of one another. Let us give us some purpose to go and seek what we disagree on. Is there a truth somewhere else besides what I hold, what you hold? And give us that as a momentum to actually.
If we can use it as a teaching, we can learn a great deal from our differences. But first, seeking that common ground so we have a base to build on, to look at the differences, is so important.
That's true, Deborah. I always say it all has to do with relationships. And if we can see the beauty in someone, that's a good place to start. Because oftentimes we don't agree with much, particularly a white supremacist is pretty difficult for me to take at all. But I still feel like even Martin Luther King would say, we've got to love and see the goodness within them. But certainly we don't say okay to what they're doing. So it all has to do with the building of relationships, and relationships are sometimes very difficult to do with some people. But if we look for the beauty in them, that's the place to start. We have had a good time together, and the hour is about up. So I think there's a song that's called Each Other's Light. Tony, you know that song? I think
I do.
Each Other's Light. I think that song would be a neat thing if you sang, just to close our time together. But first I want to say thank you, each one of you. You have shared so much that I enjoyed hearing everything you said. it's beautiful what is coming from the mouths of all of you. And I hope that we can come back together and continue working to finding out way we can create wonderful, beautiful communities. And if we can start in Wichita, that's fine. But however we do, we just need to find ways that we live together better. And it's nice to also look at the religions and say, you know, we've got things in common. Whereas I hear, particularly as a Christian, that, well, are you a Christian? You know, as though I'm not to be accepted if I'm not a Christian. That's really hurts. It really hurts, because I see the beauty so much in other religions as well. Even though I'm a Christian. I try to live by what Jesus would want me to live. But I see so much in so many of you, Deborah and those of you who are not Christian. You help me so much. I just enjoy hearing all of you, and so we're all lights. Need to be lights in this world. So why don't you send us off by just singing that, Tony?
Sure. I had a roommate in college whose name was Badaway Khader. He was Palestinian, and he had 2 children, one of which grew up to be a very good songwriter. And I asked her to take my quote: "If we can see each other's light, we can be each other's light." And she turned it into this song, entitled it "Each Other's Light." You can't hear it, can you?
We can hear your tones now.
That was the, just a second. Well, that was the piano accompaniment, so I'll just do it. I'll do it without, since I can't make it work. Look at the world with me. Is this how it should be? People dying, crying out for peace. Nations prolong history's bitter song, till all our hope and innocence is gone. And how in all the death and pain can freedom flow like falling rain? For love to live tomorrow, we must melt away this sorrow. If we can see each other's light, then we can be each other's light. And all the war and hate will disappear if we can both see eye to eye, raise our hearts and voices to the sky. We would find beauty so clear, love without fear, if we can see each other's light. Dream with me of how this world could be if our love was without walls and boundaries. Then we would know no enemy or foe, and the seeds of peace could root and start to grow.
If we could as one decide to lay down our arms and pride, then our children would not sorrow, there'd be joy for their tomorrow. If we can see each other's light, then we can be each other's light. And all the war and hate would disappear. If we can both see eye to eye, raise our hearts and voices to the sky, we would find beauty so clear, love without fear. If we can see each other's light, we fight to protect our land, but we don't understand that we must walk hand in hand. In unity we can plant a garden of peace, a garden of hope, a garden where everyone will know that there is light in every living thing. So let us see each other's light, so we can be each other's light. Then all the war and hate will disappear. When we both see eye to eye, raise our hearts and voices to the sky, we will find beauty so clear, love without fear. We'll find beauty so clear, and love without fear. When we see each other's light. There you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
And good night, all of you. And thank you so much for sharing. We'll do this again, but then sometime during the next month, we'll put something together. And if you have ideas, please just give me a call or send it to me if you have a subject or something you think we should discuss. But good night for now, and thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
See you in a few
Yes.
weeks.
Good night. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.